Roll, roll, Seminole wind. What's going on? It's Monday. That means it's time for Snakes and Stogies. We're starting it off with a bang. Phil's already frozen. We were just having a conversation and he completely froze up. So we're off to a great start. This is episode number 156. Snakes and Stogies. I'm Justin Smith of palmettocoastexotics. I am joined by Mr. Phil Wolf of the Nephrurus Initiative.
Salutations.
Look at that. Well, that's timing right there.
It is.
I was just laughing because I was like, we're just having a conversation. You just froze up. And but here he is. This episode is brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. Check them out. Use the discount code THN at checkout and save yourself a little bit of money. Get yourself a BioG. It's a fantastic cage. I love my BioGs. Love my racks. Love my XT3s and 4s. They're all awesome. Get them. You won't regret it. People underestimate the value of having a rack with drawers that pull out smoothly and don't like catch or struggle and like slosh the water everywhere. Like that is one of the things about my black box racks that I have that I love so much is that whether they're at the top or the bottom, they all open evenly and I don't have to worry about getting substrate wet and all this other stuff. That's a big thing for me. I don't know about you guys, but that is a big that's a deal breaker for me if they struggle and the tubs are really like jammed in there. Phil is frozen again, and yeah, he can attest. Cages are awesome. He's got some. Facebook, Instagram, blackboxcages.com. Check them out. And then the fine folks in the Pacific Northwest, Jeff and Kendra at Puget Sound Pythons. Check them out as well. Phil's going to continue to clone himself here. We'll nestle him right in the middle there. Can you see yourself?
No, it's a black screen.
Oh, there's two of you.
Yeah.
Good old
internet man at StreamYard. I just did speed
South
check.
South Florida weather fun again.
No, dude, it's not the internet. It's StreamYard. So
yeah, I don't know.
Roll with the punches, right?
Puget Sound Pythons, check them out, Facebook, Instagram as well. Find them on Morph Market. See what they got up for grabs. Follow them on there. Stay in the loop. Let's see. Adam asked, are wedges needed for racks for mid-sized colubrids? I do it out of paranoia, but feel like I'm doing overkill. On the black box stuff, no. I mean, for like the really, really, really small stuff, like your baby rhinos, your baby Nerodia, baby Antaresia, like really tiny stuff, I would probably say, to be safe, do some shims, but for the most part, I've been fine without them because I find that sort of this is probably stupid coming from me and my track record of gaps and things, but that gap is kind of nice for airflow. Like
sure,
if you don't have a ton of ventilation and stuff, that gap makes a world of difference. I think in terms of just keeping things moving. So.
Yeah.
What's new down yonder?
We got a weird, like, I don't want to say cold snap, but like we got a low pressure front. So it's cold by you?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because it's like 64. It's actually really comfortable.
Yeah, no, it's been in like the 30s.
Oh wow. Okay, so yeah, so I'm probably getting your tail end, which is weird, but honestly, no news is good news, man. Same old. So.
Yeah, it's been really frustrating because we have a good bit of animals still from the raffle to ship out, and people up north are still dealing with some pretty cold weather. Stuff getting into the 20s and stuff, and here it's been squirrely because it's supposed to, I think, come the end of the week, it's supposed to be back to like 80.
Crazy.
But it's like supposed to be something like 38 tonight. I don't know. It's just it's odd. Like I was sure we were done with cold weather.
Yeah.
For the first time I think ever, I was actually kind of glad about it. But it was like, nope, hold my beer. We got a little bit more for you. So planning to get some stuff shipped out. That some stuff that was supposed to be getting shipped out. Hopefully this week is the plan. I pretty much have everybody that was involved in the animals and receiving them kind of cluing me in terms of like windows for shipping and stuff, and trying to orchestrate it all and make it all work. Phil, you were back for a half a second. He's still there. Oh, those scorpion tail geckos are cool. Mike Kosicki, Donnell James, Donnell, Scott, Matt Palmer, Ryan Cox, usual suspects. As far as what's going on here, I have some corns together still. No real concrete signs of Phil has Bell's palsy. No more concrete signs of locks. Thank you. Chris got that albino cow king, and he says it is the actual Antichrist. So that you heard it from somebody else other than me. Like that little king is horrible. I don't know why it was so high strung and why it was so angry. It had no reason to be that young and that angry, but ate well. So there's that. Put some bears together. So I put my Loma Alta female shed, and I put the albino or hypo, whatever you want to call it, put him in with her, and kind of heard some thrashing around. Haven't seen anything concrete either yet there, so time will tell. And I have a couple other things that are due to shed soon that I'll probably end up putting together. Rhinos, I've been kind of doing some brief introductions here and there. So what I thought was my male, I believe, is actually the female, and what I thought was the female is actually the male, because I've introduced the female, what was the female, in with what was the male, and ends up being the female is the one chasing the other one around and sort of doing the dance, and female is not having any of it. So I've been doing like while I'm home and stuff, and kind of around, leave them together for an hour or so, and kind of just brief introductions before I kind of really leave them be full time, and we'll see how that goes. Having if it ends up being that they are actually switched around in terms of the male and female thing, then that kind of works out even better, because that female that I thought was the male is got a good bit more size on the one that I thought was the female. So that might work out in my favor. But watching them sort of interact, and watching the female watch that male as he's like cruising around in the perches and stuff like that is kind of funny, because you can tell she's just not sure what to think of it. But really hoping that happens. Jance and I, nothing really new going on there. Been getting a couple sheds here and there, so I've been kind of checking the egg box periodically, in case that there happens to be any action with those. Been feeding them a little heavier, missing them pretty heavier, and then Mike said Rhino's got to be tough to sex his babies. Yeah, and I think Terry, if I'm not mistaken, possibly Matt too. I think they do the shed sex determination with RGI, which to me I'm sure is light years easier and easier on the babies themselves, because those babies are tiny. So makes sense to me. But I've had a lot of I think they do pop. I don't see. The thing is like whether it's male or female, their tail, like, so the tail, like, past the vent to the tip is just like crazy long on both sexes. So I think unless you had them next to each other, I think it'd still be hard to tell. But I'd imagine too that given how slim those tails are, that getting peens might be tough. I don't know. I've heard of people probe and pop and things like that, and I think the RGI route might be better, personally. So let me see. Maybe Phil texted me. I bet he's restarting his computer. Had some corn sort of hanging out together in hides a lot. The males have been magnetized to the females pretty much everywhere they go. Everywhere the females go, they go. So that's a good sign. Still kind of early here in terms of like when I would normally sort of pair things together and whatnot. So trying something a little different this year. Chondros had 2 of mine shed, I think about 2 weeks ago. I was initially thinking they were going to be male. Looks like they're females. If they are, then that means that my ratio is 2.5 with an additional unknown smaller one. So what up?
So nothing wanted to work. Internet wasn't working. I had to restart the computer, check the upload speed, the download speed. I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm still blaming StreamYard. But I'm back.
Fair enough.
Yes.
How's that baby Chlorecus doing?
Chunky monkey. Giving it a pinky once a month ish, maybe a little less. And because I mean it takes a solid 2 weeks for that lump to go down, you know. Mm-hmm. And
if you cut the mouse, it wouldn't.
Well, I'm feeding it a live pinky, so
okay.
Yeah. I tried to do, I drop fed once with I brained it and drop fed it, and
Bill's gonna riot.
You there?
Yep.
Oh man, did you hear me say there goes the computer again?
No.
Oh, I literally threw my hands in the air and said, there it goes again. Anyway, yes, so I tried it, and long story short, it didn't work. So I just feed it live for now, and when it gets a little bigger and it eats like a fuzzy or a hopper, then I'll transition. So,
are those pretty slow growing species? Like how fast do squams grow?
I feel like squams grow fast because people feed the crap out of them. I can
see that.
I'll be truthful. I've never kept Atheris babies or like neonates long enough to really like go full gauntlet. My adults I got as adults, they were imports. And then the Chlorecus, I've had all different sizes, and the stuff I have now, they're imports, but they're small. They're really small. I feel like they grow probably the same speed as chondros, but people, for some reason with squams, they give them a pinky every week and they just go, and they just get big quick. So who knows?
I don't know. I can see them kind of going either way. Just given how with squams especially, how much, how hardy they are and how easy they are to sort of reproduce, and litter sizes on those are fairly decent.
Yeah. I feel like this one baby Chlorecus that I keep posting pictures of, it's grown a considerable amount. But again, I'm only feeding it every 2.5, 3 weeks to a month, depending, because I literally, it takes a solid 2 weeks for the lump to go away. And I just feel like it's such a big prey item for that tiny of a little animal that I'm okay with it taking that long, if that makes sense. And I also want to kind of let it purge whatever it's got in it before I feed it again.
Yeah.
So
It's just wild. Like you see pictures of them and they're small, but it's not until you see like a fresh squam that it's like,
Yeah.
oh my god,
Yeah.
they're so small.
Yeah. I'll tell you the smallest babies that I've ever had to work with were probably baby rugosus, the rough death adders.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Henry and I tried so much trying to get them to take a pinky head or a lizard foot or a lizard leg, and like that's a tiny baby, man.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not even that they're thin like a cocktail straw, it's that they're short too.
Yeah.
So even if you gave it, I mean, like a pinky head is almost,
That's big.
dare I say, a quarter of the length of the snake,
Yeah.
you know? So, oh, and Scott, I love you too.
Well, we figured this week we would he said they're huge compared to the Wells.
Oh,
Wells
I imagine.
I still dream about those Dejars that Cody has.
Yeah, man.
Oh, such a good looking snake.
For sure. I don't know why he hasn't bred them. I feel like he is
I
more
think he was
than
just waiting. He was like he wanted to make sure they really had some years on them before he
well, and I didn't even the way when you bring it up to him and you're like, "Hey, man, how's those those death adders?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I still got a pair of them." Like I feel like he could have paired them 3 years ago and just kept forgetting. Like they're there, like they're out of sight, out of mind, kind of thing. So,
you think the reason that death adders haven't really gotten a whole lot of attention here in the States is just because we're so limited on what we have or what we can get?
yeah, 1,000%. When people used to import the New Guinea stuff, nobody cared. And nobody really focused on them because they were New Guinea, and they're like, "Oh, I'll just get more later. I'll sell these. I'll get more later. I'll get more later. I'll get more later." And now the exporters in Indonesia are extremely selective as to whom they ship their death adders to. And because of that, the price has skyrocketed. And obviously, we can't get anything out of Australia. So all the other death adders that are most likely muddled out, with the exception of like Lavis and Rugosus, they're all captive bred. So people want an arm and a leg. They want their money's worth, which you can't blame them, but it's still poopy, you know?
Yeah. How much were the baby PNGs going for?
Death adders?
I don't. He's in the chat.
In the chat,
someone had some Rugosus at a show recently.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, I can't speak for what they go for now. I know any of like the Australian, excuse me, any of the Australian mutt stuff that they claim is Antarcticus, usually is about $1,200 for a baby.
Oof.
Ballpark, and that's cheap from what it used to be.
That's nuts.
Yep.
Oh, Scott said most of the adders she saw in Germany were hybrids.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. It's kind of the old Boellens thing. It's like I can only afford one, so
yeah,
it's okay.
Diamond Jungles back in the day.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and it's also like I don't see people crossing New Guinea Rugosus with Australian Rugosus, because you'll see some Australian Rugosus, and I mean they may have, you know, Antarctica's blood in them at some point, but the things are freaking keeled, you know. And then the New Guinea ones, they look completely different. They're brown in different shades of brown and tan. So okay, $600 for Rugosus, for New Guinea Rugosus, not bad.
Yeah, just curious. Last Columbia show that I went to, which I think was back in November, I saw there was some rotostoma.
Really?
Like really good looking ones. They were small still, but I just remember that sticking out because I hadn't seen Malayans in a minute. Like I can probably count on one hand how many shows I've seen those at, and this table had a handful. But they were actually, I think, if I recall, they weren't even asking that much for them. I think it was like $300 or $400, maybe less.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real. When I had mine, I think I paid like $40 each for adults, maybe $50, fresh from the importer. And they're obviously more money now because times are different and the world has changed. But there is some really nice stuff that just came in that I want to say is either Malayan side of the island of Borneo, or it's just choice stuff from mainland Malaysia, and high reds with purple accents. And like, dude, Keller got some, and they are fantastic looking. One just shed. He just sent me pictures.
Yeah,
awesome. One of my favorite Asian species.
Little landmines,
for sure. I pulled up the pictures of my eggs that hatched and sent it to him. And dude, memories, man. Those little landmines are adorable. They're so freaking cute.
Scott says he needs to go to Sulawesi to see latticictus.
Yeah, man, that's another one that's just few and far between these days.
The transformer of the snake world. They just, to me, they look like a freaking Decepticon if it were a snake. Like,
absolutely.
Just the giant blockhead, tiny little eyes. It's just wild. It's amazing that something that's patterned and colored like that can actually survive.
Yeah.
Because it's still, like, I mean, obviously on a branch and stuff, it stands out when it's not, it's, not in situ. But they're just cool looking snakes. Those, and I'd really like the Malabars too.
Yeah, they're all right. I think that Henry's shown me so many videos of kings eating Malabars that I've kind of been poo-pooed. I guess it's like the king's favorite food. So I'm kind of like,
definitely seems like they're prevalent enough. Like,
yeah,
those populations are healthy.
Yeah, I think Henry was telling me that I guess it's like 3 out of 10 meals for a king is going to be a Malabar, or maybe 5 out of 10. Yeah, because they're just all over the place, especially in like the wetland areas.
Mm-hmm. I love those just mossy green ones though, or those mint green.
Yeah,
those are really,
for sure.
Really good looking snakes.
Yeah, man. And dude, the laticinctus is definitive. Well, and any of the wagglers is. It's the emerald tree boa of Indonesia, of Southeast Asia. So I love it. And yeah, Scott got to see some sea crates, which was awesome. Saw those pictures. That was great.
Yeah, I bet you I bet your pictures don't do those justice.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, everything else aside, we figured this round we'd sort of talk a little bit about. We haven't really talked about like branding. Like if you're in you're a breeder or you're selling stuff, like import or whatever. I was thinking about it today, sort of scrolling through Instagram, and I've kind of come across stuff in the past that got the gears turning, but I don't know. It's interesting. So we've talked about, I think when we had Bill on not that long ago, we were talking about how everyone in reptiles, when they get like merch made and stuff, the shirts are almost always black and you don't see a ton of variation from that. But I think now people seem like they might start branching out from that and
well, I feel like the kind of people, at least in the United States and most of the Western world, I'll say, the people that kept reptiles were usually the rocker kids, the metalheads, dare I say the goths, right? So a lot of rock and roll, a lot of black, right? Black shirt accents, crazy reptile colors, and black's a really good background for logos and designs and artistry. But I feel like the newer generations, the newer styles, everything is kind of going to a lighter palette, if you will, more earth tones, more. Anna Marie was telling me the other day that there's a group of moms that what are they called? Now I can't remember. She's going to yell at me for not remembering. But basically this group of moms, it's like a trend where their children's, their infant's room or their toddler's room is all muted colors, no primary colors at all. It's all white and gray and taupe and tan and beige. There's no blue, there's no pink, there's no red, there's no green. And it's kind of cool, man. It is. But at the same, like, I love brown snakes. I love brown lizards. Like, people always made fun of me for it. Earth tones are my thing. I wear khaki pants every day, for Christ's sake. but I don't think I could live that entirely taupe life. Does that make sense? And again, my t-shirts are black.
Right.
The hell, it's slimming, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like that's where it kind of stemmed from.
It's definitely, I don't know if maybe, I think it's, you could probably call it the Pinterest effect.
Yeah, you could.
Because like we have some friends from high school that live at the end of the street, and they just had a baby not that long ago, and they have the room themed kind of like a campground, if you will. So it has like forest greens and like browns and some like fire reds and like just really interesting,
cool
color schemes. And like now that having been at the job I've been at now for almost a year, which is hard to believe,
it is.
I do a lot of art and graphics and things for people in the shirts they make, and it's kind of been a good exercise in making colors work.
Sure.
Especially when you're sort of limited on like what shirt colors you have available for certain shirts and things like that. And that's something that I've actually come to really prefer and like over black, is like your coyote browns, your sand, like military green, like those with like black art, like just black ink, works really well.
It's a negative effect.
Yeah. It's just interesting. And then playing with the contrast of, if I do use black or like navy, and sort of making those colors pop and work with that. And you see it on Instagram. Like, I don't know if it's been the same for you, but Instagram lately with like the logo maker.
Oh yeah.
Pages, like Reptile specific logo maker pages.
Sure.
I'm actually,
and
one of them followed me the other day. I'm gonna look it up.
And yes, Ryan Cox, my children will have a thatched hut themed bedroom with a crank radio in the corner. Yes. Inside jokes. I also remember when I was in college, I took an advertising class, and one of the tasks, they had like a group building thing, group team building, whatever. And it was, you had to design a soda pop can, right? And they instructed us that to do a soda pop can out of aluminum, you could only have a maximum of 4 colors. And originally they did that because that's as many colors as they could get on the aluminum when they did like the stampings, right? And then it turned out that through marketing research and advertising research, they realized that we enjoy 4 colors or less, and people are drawn to 4 colors or less. And if it's really, really crazy, they're maybe skeptical to buy it, which clearly we know that's not the case these days. I mean, crap, all the IPAs have rainbows on them, for crying out loud, and we love them. So, and just like in nature, color brings your eye to it. It's flashy, it's poppy, right? Yeah. Excuse me. So you had to basically figure out what your logo was going to be in these 4 colors. So did you want to do black on red like Coca-Cola, or did you want to do red on green like Mountain Dew? And then you'd look at the actual can of the soda and you'd be like, man, you think that Coke's black and red, but there is 4 colors in there. It's 2 different colors of red, white, and black, or maybe sometimes the white is silver and it's just the raw aluminum color. So putting together logos, a lot of people will still keep with that 4 color spectrum, and they don't even realize they're doing it, which I thought was really, really interesting.
As far as yours for the Nephrurus one, is there anything, if you went back now, is there anything you would change about that? He froze again. Damn it, Phil. So with the Palmetto Coast logo, which is right here, I have rocked the same profile picture for that on Facebook and Instagram since pretty much day one. And my thinking behind that, instead of changing it constantly, so like with Herpetoculture magazine, usually once a month or every 2 weeks or so, I'd change the background of that just to kind of, change it up, keep it interesting. With the Palmetto Coast one, I've kept that the same, and very specifically because I found like a gradient picture that I really like, and I've wanted that over time to sort of build an association with, like, if you see those colors, then you would see my logo with it typically. What's Cox saying? So are your team simple new textile designs or the old school design where it's almost an art piece? Ooh, that's a good question, Cox.
What I miss?
Nothing. I was talking about the Palmetto Coast logo and how, like, I've used the same profile picture for Palmetto Coast stuff pretty much since day one and haven't changed it, just because there's like a color scheme there that I like.
Yeah.
That I, over time, like, that's subconsciously it builds an association. I mean, we see it with so many other like major brands that we have now. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Like, when I see bright yellow, I think of Dollar General, and that's because we have $1 million Dollar Generals here.
Yeah, I mean, red and green, 7-Eleven.
Yep. So, Easter Island statue. But Cox has a good question. He said, are you team simple new textile design or the old school design where it's almost an art piece? And I kind of go back and forth. I think there is currently sort of a trend that seems to lean towards the more simple, techy kind of deal, which is okay for the most part. I feel like some of it's almost like, if you're paying for a logo and you're paying an artist like really good money for one, and they kind of just do something that you could have frankly thrown together on Canva with little effort, I'd be a little irritated with that.
Well,
because some of it's so simple that it's like,
yeah, it's almost. But at the same time, though, there are certain people. I mean, not to toot our own horns, but you and I have a very artistic eye, and we see in our mind what we want to. We envision in our mind what we want to see, and then we articulate that best, whether we do it ourselves or we have someone else do it, right? So when I was doing the Nephris logo, I knew that I wanted it to be in the negative, where it was a blank background with Australia and then the gecko in the middle. And I kind of played around with a lot of flecking and like negative dots on there. And then I realized I really wanted it to be only two colors, just black and red, or maybe red and brown, or orange and black, which is what I went with. And that was solely because I knew I wanted to make shirts, and I knew it would be 10 times easier for whomever was making the shirts, and it wound up being Billy. It'd be easier just to use one color. So you have a black shirt or a tan shirt with a black logo or an orange logo. And I went with the it's actually called orange soda, is actually that color. And I went with it because nobody really has an orange logo. And I figured it was close enough to the red, centery, desertiness of Australia without being red or pink. So that was my rationale for it. And I think it came out good. People seem to like it. Obviously I'm not a major business and I don't have people beating my door down to get t-shirts, but I've sold a handful. So.
Yeah. And I mean, the Palmetto Coast one, when I was sort of thinking of ideas, like, that was kind of exactly what I envisioned was, this thing with the moon at the top corner for Carolina. And that was when I was, starting out and doing crested. So there's crested scalation or gargoyle scalation, all around it. But I eventually, after, a couple of years, actually had Adeline Robinson do like a chondro eye in the same design. Like, I took the old file that I'd had and I said, can you replace the eyeball with a chondro eye? And now, I mean, looking back, would I change it completely and maybe do the, the scalation stuff differently? Probably. But at this point, I think once you find a logo and sort of a branding theme, be it color and sort of aesthetic or whatever, I think it's really important to sort of stick to that. Like, there's a reason you don't see Walmart and big major brands completely revamping their logo and stuff on a regular basis. Like, they do that like once a decade, and usually it's just an update of some sort to where it just looks a little more modern to the times.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's actually if you go on YouTube, you can go and find videos that people have made that are basically slideshows of a major brand in the United States and its logo changing over the years. So, like for example, we'll start with McDonald's, and like we know McDonald's is get the white letters and it has the golden arches, right? They've got the golden arches. We've got the golden arch. Anyway, um, for those of you who know that movie, made myself laugh. Sorry. And you can watch the transition. Wendy's, same thing. Burger King, same thing. Taco Bell, the different colors. Taco Bell is actually I think the coolest one because it started off with almost like a pastel purple and green, and it just transitioned to be what it is now with the yellow and blue in there. And I mean, strictly we're talking fast food, but this can be anything. And I really feel like, at least in the modern world, humans love branding, and it can be applied to anything. And my father, I had asked, so when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm, right? And we had this one farmhand. I don't even remember the guy's name. The guy was ancient. I mean, the dude was damn near petrified, but he had worked for my grandfather for like 60 years or whatever. He worked for my great grandfather. He was hired by my great grandfather and just kept on working. And I asked my dad, I said, hey, how come he's worked for us all these years? And my father, who's a Western movie junkie similar to myself, he says, it's because you ride for the brand. And I said, what? He goes, you ride for the brand. You have pride in the brand. And it was at that point that it clicked in my mind that when he was saying brand, he didn't mean brand like company or logo. He meant brand like on the side of the cow's butt, the actual branding of the animal. And that was the whole thing was you if you were a cattleman, if you were a cowboy or a ranch hand, you rode for the brand and you had pride in your brand. And that stuck with me all these years, to the point where if you're a Ford guy or you're a Chevy girl, right? If you are a motorcycle person and you do Harley or you do Suzuki or whatever, you love that brand, you buy that branded merch.
It becomes
right.
There's an identity factor.
Yeah, exactly.
That gets attached to it.
An identity factor and a pride that's associated with it. And I mean, no different than even in our reptile world, like there's Zilla people, there's Zoom Ed people, there's Exoterra people, and like we all own all of them, but we still have our preferences and we still love those brands. And I feel like when someone wants to start breeding and start to make I don't even want to say business, I'll say the word brand, right? We'll get Ryan Cox will have the clicker tonight to see how many times we say the B word, right? So someone who's getting into herpetoculture and wants to start a brand, it's just an extension of the pride they have for what they've created. And I absolutely love that. And I feel like even if you don't produce anything ever, or better yet, you don't sell anything ever, I think it's still cool that we have these brands and we have these logos that are a representation of us and what we're doing. Sorry if that was a little rambly.
No, I get it. And that's something I have gone back and forth with myself on is, people that go all out and get, logos made and they start branding themselves, but they don't have anything basically to market or sell. Is that jumping the gun? I mean, if it's so like with palmettocoastexotics, my own stuff, prime example. I wanted to do like brand myself and come up and thought of a name and took some time and I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't do any of that stuff really until I think I had either started pairing geckos or I got some eggs first. Like basically I didn't want to put myself out there, branded and all. And then when people were like, oh, well, what do you have for sale? And I'm like, oh, nothing, I won't be breeding for another like 2 years kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of go back and forth. Like at the same time, if it is something you're planning to do, long-term and stick with, doing that for the sake of sort of reserving that name and that place, I guess, it does make sense. But then, I mean, we look at Skylar. Like, Skylar has Hail the Scales, and he's got a sick logo that stands out, and things like that. And he's branding himself, and he's doing his thing because he's also putting out YouTube content and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I feel
and he wouldn't brand anything yet until he had at least a few projects going.
Well, and see, that's the thing is, I look at what you just said about PCE, right? So a lot of people, especially in the younger generations, they see and again, what I'm saying is anecdotal. I am not in the reptile business at all. I've bred stuff. I plan on breeding stuff. I do not consider myself a breeder. I have no animals for sale. I have no products for sale. I mean, yeah, I've got some shirts and stickers and stuff, but that doesn't count for what we're talking about, right? I feel like it's very easy nowadays for someone who wants to do this, who wants to embark on this journey, to make an Instagram, to make a TikTok, to make a Facebook page, to pump out a badass logo and write some cool bio and just basically give a jump start to what they plan on doing. And it's free marketing. It's social exposure, right? Because it's social media. And it's super easy to do that. But I also feel like it may be discouraging as well, because now the feel of the hustle is there. I need to get more likes. I need to get more followers. I need to get more views, right? And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. But just going back to what you said is it right or wrong to make a brand and then have nothing to fucking show for it? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you're aware of it. And as long as the person who's doing it understands that building a business takes time, building a brand takes time, and you're going to have peaks and valleys. So for someone to say, I'm going to be a breeder and I'm going to make a logo and do an Instagram page and dare I say, buy a website, but it's going to take 5 years before my animals are even big enough to do it. If they want to do it, knock themselves out, man.
Oh yeah,
Make yourself happy,
It makes me scratch my head a little bit, because it's my mantra of announcing your plans is a good way to make God laugh.
Exactly,
and a lot can happen.
I kind of
now in 2029.
I kind of diverged from where I was going with that ramble. What I was going to say is, and now I kind of lost my train of thought of how I wanted to formulate this, but the reason why I don't want to say cringy, the reason why it's not as socially accepted nowadays is because it's so easy to do. Because when you and I were kids, there was no social media. Most people, they didn't worry about a website. They didn't worry about an ad in the yellow pages. They didn't worry about an ad in a magazine to try and sell their merch or try and sell their produced offspring. They built it first. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And now, because it's not only easy, but it's free to put the horse in front of the cart,
right?
Or put the cart in front of the horse, however the phrase goes. I feel like that's where our generation kind of looks at, like, what are you doing?
What's going on?
Yeah, what are you doing? So, but I'm not saying it's bad. I mean, we kind of all have done it to some extent.
Yeah. To me, it's the actions speak louder than words. It's like, don't tell me how you're going to do something. Just show up one day with it done.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I look at it.
That's good.
Let me see.
But that also doesn't mean that people can't just have fun.
Oh, for sure.
I mean?
For sure.
Yeah. And like, if you have a logo in your head and you're like, man, I got this logo in my head, I'm going to put pen to paper, or dare I say stylus to screen, right? And you want to stylus to screen this logo, and you say, man, I really like, for example, Jake, our boy Jake had a logo. Jake had a company. Jake sold stuff. Jake produced stuff. Jake wasn't pleased with the direction in which it was going. He wanted to rebrand, right? Which can be a very scary and daunting thing, especially if you're really successful. And Jake said, you know what? I'm going to rebrand, and I'm going to kind of change how I'm doing things and what my brand is going to look like. And he wanted to focus on the rat snakes. He wanted to focus on the Southeast United States in his area and the animals that he was keeping. And he said, man, I really want to do something with like a rat snake. And I drew a logo that on stylus to screen, right? And I was like, what do you think of this? And he's like, oh, that's awesome. And then he took that and he gave it to an actual artist to clean it up and fix it up and make it right. I'm not offended at that at all. I think that's fantastic because I got to help my buddy out. My buddy got the logo that he was envisioning in his mind that he wanted, or that maybe he didn't know he wanted it. And then he got to give it to an artist who not only got paid to do what they love and they do, but made him happy too. So whether Jake sells another snake the rest of his life, I'm still happy. And that whole thing transpired like that. And he got a cool logo.
Yeah. Cool he's a really good example too of, you know, when you're planning these things of a name and a logo, you know, really ask yourself if you're just doing ball pythons, for example, or, you know, Morelia in Jake's case, like Jake was so hardcore into carpets, and he still is, like, don't get me wrong, but you know, he started getting into more colubrids and stuff, and he's like, I remember there was one day or one night in particular, I think he had mentioned to me, he's like, I kind of wish I hadn't painted myself into the Morelia corner with the name, because now he's diversifying. So that was part of the reason that he had switched it up too. And you know, I knew, like, there was a point in time where I was very seriously considering Palmetto Coast cresteds, but then I also sort of remembered in the back of my mind that I eventually wanted to get back to snakes. So I was like, let me change it and do exotics. And
yeah. And I feel like although Jake had something in his mind, whether it was one way or another, I don't think he necessarily needed to change it. And because he could still be a Morelia company, for lack of a better word, and still branch out and do other types of animals.
For sure.
But it did help the motif that he was trying to evolve into by rebranding. Scott says something really cool. When should something become a brand? I.e., when did NPR become a brand? When it was a single episode in Eric's bathroom, or when it was a season in or 5 seasons in? Where's the line? And I think that's a great question, because as someone like myself that just started a new podcast last year, I had the intro to the show, the outro to the show, and the logo that would be put onto social media as well as the podcast channels and t-shirts before we ever record a single episode. And I feel like that was the best way for me to do it, because I knew what we were going to do, because I had the experience doing this with you guys. And I think if I was just starting it out of nowhere, I probably wouldn't have had all my ducks in a row the way that I did. And I feel like had Eric made a logo and a channel and a social media network and everything else before he ever recorded a single episode and then recorded it, I don't think it would have made a difference. I think it would have helped. I do. But that's not to say that you have to do all those things before you record. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's a good example too. I mean, THP, like, for the first, I want to say inside of like 20 episodes, we didn't have like a dedicated logo.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was necessarily me just saying, like, at any point we could bail on this and it just disappear.
Sure.
Like, I didn't want to sink like money and stuff into like the branding of it and the logo and stuff until I kind of knew for sure that it was actually like sticking around. Actually, I'm curious. I'm going to go back and look.
Yeah.
But it was a while before I actually got the logo done for THP.
Yeah, and actually I was going to ask, because we were talking about podcast logos, was because like Lizard Brain has the crested gecko on the branch. Was that always supposed to be there and he just never put the actual Lizard Brain head logo? Or was that just like the first picture he ever used and it stuck?
No, I made that one.
No. You made the crested one, or you made the head one?
The head one.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, if you go into Apple Podcasts right now and you go to Lizard Brain Radio, it's not the head one; it's the crested gecko. And I didn't know if he just never if Bill never updated it, or if that's like he did it on purpose. I never asked him that. But that kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. He didn't have a logo, so he used a picture of a crested gecko, which fit perfectly. It did.
Mhm.
And then he says, you know what? I'm really doing this. It's time to make a logo. And Smitty made the logo. So I think that's a great example is Lizard Brain Radio.
So it wasn't until episode 36
that THP
that I started using the THP logo. Like
so as far as I was listening, because I think I started listening maybe 10 or 15 episodes after that. You guys were into it for maybe a year or so, or maybe 7, 8 months. What was the logo before the satellite tower?
I didn't have one.
I just used, what was the picture?
I used the same. So the picture would change on the thumbnails, but the font that I used religiously was League Spartan, I think.
Okay.
And fonts is another thing that I could, God, at work when I'm putting stuff together and choosing fonts, I will sit there and scroll through fonts for 20 damn minutes to find the one. Fonts drive me crazy. And it was the same thing with the magazine. Like when we were doing the magazine, I was doing layout stuff. I would spend so much time trying to decide on fonts for like the covers of the the actual covers of the magazine, but then like the first pages of articles and things like that, and
headliners. Yeah,
dude, I drive myself crazy with that. But I found that font and liked it a lot, and kind of stuck with that for the first 36 episodes. Because after a while, I dug it, and I felt it kind of almost worked the same as a logo did to an extent.
Yeah.
Because it just the recognition aspect of it. Like I want consistency. To me, that is the biggest thing.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to like branding yourself, is consistency and staying on brand. And you look at any of the like major brands, like we do embroidery work or something for someone. And if it's like a nationwide sort of franchise, like they have a packet that the people send you that says you are not allowed to use anything but these 4 colors. You cannot adjust the logo in any way. Like if you're doing a black shirt, it has to be red logo. Like they have like branding parameters that you pretty much have to follow.
Yeah, it's got to be uniform.
And like some of it's a little silly, but at the same time, there's a consistency there. And I think THN, that sort of acid green, that's a color that with the black I've always just liked, and it's stuck, and that's just part of the consistency aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think your choice of black with the acid green is the exact same reason I picked the orange soda color with the black for mine, because nobody was using it and it stood out and it was memorable, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
I love our colors. It's fantastic. So it's funny you actually wanted to do, we talked about doing a branding episode, and yesterday I went with Anna Maria, Matt, and Jamie to Invasive Species Brewing Company in Fort Lauderdale. Shameless plug.
Hey. Oh, that's cool.
And I got this super cool hat, right? And here, I'll show the logo once more, just in case people got to rewind or whatever. And they have a ton of beer, all different types of beer, fruity stuff, IPA, hoppy stuff, stouts, porters, you name it, they make it. And excuse me, their main logo that you guys just saw is actually an iguana skeleton. And it's such a cool logo, because I mean, let's face it, it's Fort Lauderdale, it's South Florida, there's a lot of invasive species, and they have some beers named after certain invasive stuff, but almost all their merch either has this logo in different colors, different shades, mostly earth tones, which is kind of the vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they also use the whole concept of Invasive Species Brewing Co. South Florida, and they do like an old school 1950s road sign, like "Welcome to Florida," like that on a shirt. They have the state of Florida that's all different animals that are some invasive, some native. They're like sketch drawn into it. And they've taken this one logo and they've branched it out to be this bigger brand, to the point where they don't have any merch in stock. Like I luckily I wanted this color. This is the only color they had left of the hats. So excuse me. I feel like just because you pick a particular logo and a particular color palette doesn't mean you have to stick with it. You can always adapt and evolve and expand that branding.
To be
even more. Yeah.
And that is kind of the fun. Like if you are someone who has the ability to sort of play around with graphics and art and things like that, I do it with the New South shirts that we sell in the store. Like they're not all the same design, but I make sure like the New South logo is on there somewhere. And that's just mostly for if someone sees somebody with the, South Carolina with the sea turtle on it, they're like, oh, where'd you get that? I like that. And they're like, I can't remember, but if I have it on there, then it's easier for them to remember.
Yeah.
The red design on black Snakes and Stogies logo I wore this weekend popped. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I think the THN logo in particular, as much as the bright colors on black gets kind of played out, it pops, like it works.
Yeah, for sure.
It stands out.
Excuse me. Another one that I absolutely love is Billy Hunt, Uwabami Reptiles. So when Billy wanted to do his Uwabami Reptiles thing, so Uwabami is Japanese for giant snake, and he wanted to use the Japanese kanji, and he had actually sought out a bunch of different, I don't know if we want to say calligraphy experts or people that specialized in kanji writing and stuff, and he had basically picked out a handful of different style or fonts of the same kanji, and then gave it to a graphic artist to add little bamboo shoots to it and add the word Uwabami Reptiles on there. And it's a great color palette of white, black, like forest green, and tan, to the point where if you switch one or two colors, you can put it on damn near any background. So his main background is white, but let's say he wanted to put it on black, he could reverse the white and the black outline, and it would still pop the same. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And he always tells a story. I don't want to tell a story for him, but he always tells a story of, I guess he was out somewhere with friends and he had his shirt on with the Uwabami logo, and this like old Japanese guy starts pointing at him and like giggling. And he's like, what's the matter? Did I spell it wrong? And he goes, no, you spelled it perfect. I'd never seen that before. That's awesome. So he always gets a kick out of that. I mean, maybe I told that story wrong, but I always get a hoot when he tells that story.
Yeah, and he was wise in making sure that it was what it actually was supposed to be. Because I mean, how many people get tattoos of that and it ends up not being anything?
For sure. For sure. And honestly, it kind of, despite him being a Morelia breeder, he had the wherewithal or the forethought, if you will, to keep with the Asian theme, because he's very much enamored with Asian culture and he loves Asian species of reptiles, to the point where now he's branching out more into Elafe and Colignathus and some of the other Asian rat snake species that are eluding me scientifically right now. And it just goes right into his same logo and brand,
Yeah. And it is sort of this fine balance of like, you don't want to be too specific in terms of what you're doing, but you don't want to be too broad either.
Yeah.
You don't want to kind of lock yourself into a box necessarily. Because rebranding is expensive. Like when you got to, redo logos and completely overhaul everything, that shit costs money.
Oh yeah.
Jack Oliver asked earlier, any advice on brainstorming a name for your brand / collection when you're still not sure of the direction of your collection, or should you just wait until you know? Well, as we say a lot, over time, your tastes and stuff change. I think everyone here at THN is a pretty good indicator of that, at least, half of us, of the five, myself and Jake having a pretty drastic shift in what we're keeping and focused on over the years. And even Chris, he kind of has some things that kind of ebb and flow in terms of like Pituophis and how much of those he's working with versus the Mex stuff versus corns and geckos and things. And you're not doing just venomous stuff. You've got a good bit of
Yeah.
Australian things in terms of liasis and
Yeah.
and all kinds of stuff.
And
So,
North American colubrids, man.
yeah.
So
it's the same thing that I'd mentioned earlier. It's planning ahead to a degree. I mean, you're obviously not going to be able to plan for everything that might change in the future. You're not going to be able
sure.
to see that. But kind of, like I said, you're not keeping it too narrow, but not too broad.
Yeah. I was told that a good company name should sound fun and at the same time give a very good hint as to what you're selling. And by selling, I mean sharing or showing or teaching,
what you're
educating, what you're doing. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So Palmetto Coast Exotics, it's exactly that. It's fun because it's like, oh, what's the Palmetto Coast? Oh, what kind of exotics, right? At the same time, if you know what the Palmetto Coast is, it's South Carolina.
See, that's where that was a misstep on my part, because I had people message me early on asking me where in Florida I was, thinking that I was like in the Orlando.
Yeah, but see, that's Palm Coast.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Huge the only reason I didn't do Palmetto State Exotics, which was initially my plan, is there was some guy, like, I think in Walterboro, that had it already.
Okay.
I don't think that guy's even around anymore, because I was really gunning for that. Like, I'm South Carolinian, born and bred, man. Like, I'm proud of my state.
Yeah, man.
And everything here is palmetto, palm and moon.
Yeah.
Palmettos. Like, it is used a lot, but yeah, that was something. If I could go back, that would be something I'd fix. If I knew that guy was kind of just going to disappear into the abyss, then I would have totally been like, I'm using that.
Yeah, but see, at the same time, I think that the southeastern U.S. folks that know the Palmetto State, right? They know the South Carolina flag. It's super iconic. Dare I say, the most iconic flag on the eastern seaboard, state-wise, right? That's been around since literally before the Civil War.
You know why? It's because of the simplicity.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Literally a palmetto and a moon.
1,000%. So I think that those people are going to appreciate it, and then the people that don't know what it is, it's going to pique their interest, to pique their curiosity to find out, which I like a lot. You know what I mean? Nobody knows what the Florida flag looks like unless you lived here and went to school here. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the Florida flag,
that Florida flag, I recognize it, but I don't, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you
what. So it's a white flag with red bars in an X with a circle in the middle that has a bunch of state crest stuff, right? And although I feel the Florida flag is a very attractive flag and it shows a lot of our state natural resources and iconic crests, right? The history of the state, it's not memorable at all, in my opinion, right? I mean, and then you look at a state like Texas, that's a hell of a flag. You know what I mean? So you look at a state like Alaska, hell of a flag. So, and maybe it comes down to the simplicity, like you said, who knows? Yeah. And that translates in the sense of, yes, these are state government representations, but it's still a brand. It's still
even
branding.
The California flag. Like, I like the California.
Yeah, exactly. With the bear.
You'll never have me live in California, but I like their flag.
Agreed. No offense, Lisa.
Yeah, Jack Oliver. He's another South Carolinian representative.
And Eric Westmoreland, corns and more since '94. I love it. That's good.
What are your thoughts on the use of the word exotics? Because it gets used a lot, and that's something else I've thought about. Like, if I could go back, would I change using that?
Well, I feel like you almost, I don't want to say you have to use it, but it's a very, very good describing word. And I feel like snakes is too generalized. Herps is too taboo.
Like, yeah, and
most people don't.
Obscure.
Right. Reptiles is easy and it gets the point across, but I feel like reptiles is used way more than exotics. And that's not to, I'm not talking shit about people that have the word reptiles in their logo name or whatever, I feel like it's almost unnecessary. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Triple L reptiles, underground reptiles. You know what I mean? Big Apple reptiles. So it really gets the point across. But if we can find something that's a little more unique, a little more exotic, if you will, I say go with it, roll with it. Nothing wrong with it.
Maryland flag is weird. Yeah, Maryland flag is weird and memorable.
Yeah, it's got a giant crab on it.
Henry said we should have a gator on our flag. You really should.
We really should.
I'm amazed that wasn't a thing.
Well, so not only does I think, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Florida
too.
Spoonbill would be super cool. Big pink bill. Anyway, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Florida has the most state animals. I could be wrong, but I also know for a fact that it has the most animal crossing signs, the most number of different species animal crossing signs in all the United States. Which I think that's super cool, man.
Do you know? Does Florida have a state spider?
I don't know. Let me look it up. Let me look it up. FL state animals.
Our state spider is the wolf spider.
Really? Hognolenta?
Carolinensis.
Oh, Carolinensis. Okay. So I am on the Florida Department of State's website. And should I try and screen share this?
Sure.
Yeah, let's screen share this. Share screen. All right.
You got too many roads, Mike Kosicki said.
Yeah, we do have a lot of roads. All right, so state animal, panther, that's a given.
Where's your hockey team is going to be named after.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, so here's the flag.
Oh, I have seen that.
You have seen that. And you can see it's got the boat
like
and
a cigar label on it.
Yeah, right. And then In God We Trust with the palmetto and the tree and the lady. So, all right, reptile. There it is.
In Florida, man, we trust.
In Florida, man, we trust. Okay, reptile, of course, is going to be the alligator. State bird should be the swallow. Oh, no, it's not. It's the mockingbird.
Carolina wren.
I thought ours was the swallow-tailed kite. Interesting. I didn't expect that. Butterfly. Zebra longwing. Okay, we saw the panther. Marine mammal. Manatee.
Go figure.
I know, right?
That's so predictable.
I know, it really is. Oh, gosh.
State reptile also could have been the Eastern Diamondback easy.
It could have been. It could have been. All right, well, that's enough of this because it was clearly not what I thought. I thought it was way more. I thought it was like state songbird, state raptor, state migratory bird, state shorebird. Clearly, I was wrong. So, but yeah, we definitely have the most signs for crossing. But that just goes to show you that nobody knew what the hell that flag looked like until we showed it. So.
It's all the stripes and stuff everywhere and
Billy Jenkins. I love sea cows.
I love sea cows.
Sea cows love you back, Billy Jenkins.
Yeah, and Chris earlier said, he also kind of hates the whole brand craze in some aspects, and I get that too.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of in an odd time in herpetoculture currently, just with everyone feeling the need to be a breeder and feeling the push to have pairs of things and make more of them. And I've not that long ago commented that I can't really say one way or the other if I think that's okay or not, because I breed, and until I stop, then I'll have an opinion.
I think I can have an opinion because I'm not a breeder, but I've bred stuff. And in my opinion, there are people that want to become a breeder because they want to become a breeder. and good for them. And there are people that want to become a breeder because they've done a lot in the hobby, in the community, in the all-encompassing reptile world, and they want to go to the next level. And that next level doesn't mean it's a higher level. It just means the next level, the next chapter, if you will. And I think that's great too. What I get bothered by is the people that do it because they think it's going to be easy money. It bothers me when they don't look at these animals as living creatures or as loved and cherished pets. They look at them as just dollar signs, you know. And I've talked about the one story when I was working at this one reptile shop, and this woman came in with a sterilite container full of normal ball pythons, wild types, if you will. And she storms in cursing, and she throws, and I mean, she throws the tub on the counter, and it slides across the counter, and an employee catches it so it doesn't fall off the other edge of the bar. And she goes, "You guys freaking lied to me. You told me that if I bought that snake and this snake, it would make this, and I could sell these babies for $5,000 each. And oh, they all came out brown. They just all came out brown. You guys are a bunch of effing A's, and you're effing liars, and blah, 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 blah." And she stormed out. She left those snakes. What she had was 100% hets. At a time when that particular morph, the hets were, I think, going for like $1,800 each, something like that. I don't remember exactly what morph it was. This was a decade ago, whatever, if not longer.
It had to be
longer. And it made me sick to my stomach that not only was this woman extremely ignorant because she didn't know that she had gold and she didn't realize it because she didn't know the concept of a head, but that she was only looking at these living creatures as dollar signs. And that really, really bothers me. And there's so many people out there that breed and they do a great job of it, and it's their livelihood and it's their business. And yes, it is dollar signs, but at the end of the day, they love and cherish those dollar signs. I phrased that wrong. They love and cherish those animals that could be liquid income.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between them and her.
That's something that I've thought about to myself a lot too, is, you know, the whole, it's not about money. Yeah. It's like, if you're doing it as a business, it's a little bit about money.
It's a lot about money. Let's be real. You're doing it for a business. You know what I mean? There are people
I'm not doing it as a full-time business.
No, you're not, and I'm not, but there are people that do. You know what I mean? And I'll use Tiki's geckos for an example. Okay. Tiki and Manny are running a fantastic business breeding reptiles. They're killing it. They produce amazing animals. They have some well-established captive wild-caught stuff that they're captive breeding. They're doing great. And that's how they make their living. That's how they pay their bills. That's how they live. But at the same time, they love their animals. They're herpers at heart, and they love it. Every single time a gecko hatches out, their eyes light up. I've been there in Tiki's like incubator room and watched him crack open a deli cup, and like he just smiles ear to ear. Now, a little bit of the smile is probably because he knows it's worth a pretty penny, but he's still smiling at the fact that he just helped create this life. You know. And dude, when Manny produces blue tongue skinks, and it doesn't matter what comes out, it doesn't matter what the morph is. Yeah, he hopes that they all come out melanistic because that would be amazing. He could retire early. But at the same time, the fact that he did it and he has these baby blue tongues, like, that's awesome. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with people, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with people being a breeder as a business. It's when you stop loving the animals, or you never loved the animals to begin with, that's the problem, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. And I do wonder how you know, is it really as prevalent as people think or say it is? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's hard for me to imagine that it is, given that that's not, you know, what I do or how I see it, or even the people that I hang out with and talk to on a regular basis. Like, I know none of us are like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to me, I don't see it, but I'm sure if there was someone who was on the show circuit and doing a lot of shows and stuff, that you probably would, and I'd have to imagine that, being at the ball python sector is so huge and vast that it's statistically probably more prevalent there than anywhere else.
Yeah. And also there is a certain level of, just to be blunt, there's a certain level of desensitization that does happen when you're dealing with these things day in and day out. Whether it becomes too much of your work and you kind of lose, I don't want to say lose the love, but
you lose some steam.
You lose some steam. When you're cleaning poo day in and day out, you're not necessarily eager to go to work over and over and over again. Or if you work in a reptile shop or a pet shop or an importer, and you do this stuff all day, you don't necessarily want to go home and take care of your own animals. Like, I get that. I did that. I worked for an importer from 9 to 5. And when I got home, there was no way in hell I was cleaning cages. So that means I got to do it on my day off, which sucks because now I just feel like I'm doing the same job on my day off. So that's why I got out of working, like actually working with reptiles, because it was too much for me. And it killed the excitement of being with them and working with them and enjoying them, because I was doing it day in, day out.
Yeah. And that's a perspective that you're not going to get unless you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think everyone at some point has been like, man, I'd really love to do this full time. And there's a severely romanticized idea about it. Because even I've kind of gone back and forth. It's like, would I eventually like to, like, yeah, retirement comes around eventually, if that's even a thing by the time we're there.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I don't want to just retire and just sit around and do nothing. Like, if I was going to do that, like, the snake thing is perfect for that, because, keeps you mobile, keeps you doing things, and keeps your brain sharp. And I don't know, because there's some days where I have to clean and do water changes, and I mean, my collection isn't huge by any means, but it is sizable. And it's like, damn, there's some days where I'm just not feeling it. And then that's when I'm like, I don't know that this is what I want to do full time.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. And just going back to people doing it for a living and doing like the show circuits and stuff, I have seen it where someone who does the show circuit, and they do a lot of shows, they're doing it 3 or 4 weekends a month. They're traveling a lot. It's become their supplemental life, right? Their supplemental income. And I was at a show, I was vending a show, and a guy in the booth next to me had a snake died. It died in transit. I didn't inquire, but he was really upset. And he was like, he said to himself, he said to himself, like, oh, there goes $1,000 down the drain, right? And I looked at him, and at first I was like, that was a living creature, man, like in my mind, And then I sat back and I watched him take the animal out and hold it and examine it. And I could see the look on his face. And he didn't mean what he said. He didn't mean, oh, great, I just lost $1,000.
Right.
What he meant was, I just lost, months, if not years, of tender, loving care on this animal, and now it's gone.
Yep.
And maybe I didn't do it justice. Maybe I didn't give it what it deserved. Maybe he lost some money. You know what I mean? But the way that he phrased it, it came off really bad. But just looking at his facial expression and watching him hold this animal, you could tell that wasn't what he meant. That's not how he actually felt. And I feel like there is a lot of that. And I feel like we do hear people say things like that all the time, and that may not be what they actually meant. Unlike that woman that came in, that is 100% what she freaking meant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the whole going back to the whole branding thing, what are your thoughts on the Canova switch?
I haven't seen it.
So it was originally Justin Kilbilka.
Right.
And he rebranded as Canova.
Yeah, but see, I feel like they were using that name for a long time. Weren't they?
They have been now. I mean, it's been like at least a year or two. I feel like that's a really sort of interesting case study, and I don't have anything against Kabilka. I don't know the guy. When I saw the switch at first, I was like, to me, I immediately thought Xerox. It looks and
Okay.
sounds like Xerox to me. Like the
Okay.
logo the logo is cool. It's very simple, but again, simplicity stands out. And the name was just weird because, like, if someone walked up to you and said, "Have you ever heard of Canova?" The last thing you're going to think about is reptiles.
Well, see, and that's and I see where you're coming from a completely outsider's point of view, and I may agree with you on that one. However, from me having at least one ear to the floor, I mean, I'm nowhere near engulfed as many of our listeners or even you or many of our friends. I'm all over the place these days, but I feel like I knew that was his shtick before you just mentioned it. And it wouldn't shock me if a lot of people in the community associate them being the same and thinking, okay, well, it's not just him. We know him because he's him, but it's always been Canova. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, now that I think about it, like it's almost borderline genius because he kind of almost reverse engineered the whole thing to where it's like there is no reptiles in that business name. There is no exotics in that business name. It is just Canova.
Yeah, and for all we know,
like
that could have been.
It stands out so much because of that now you get the same mental association that you had when Kabilka was Justin Kabilka, reptiles or whatever it was pre.
We don't know if all right. So like in my industry, it's very, very common for the business owner to be the figurehead, right? So using it in I mean, let me think of all right, we'll use music as an example. Okay.
Prince.
Right. Before Ozzy Osbourne had all of his before Ozzy Osbourne had all of his multiple different bands, right? It was Black Sabbath. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
People would still refer to it as Ozzy. People would still refer to it as Ozzy Osbourne, right? But the band was Black Sabbath. And there's a lot of businesses where, let's say, Bob Smith, right, is the business owner, and everyone knows that Bob breeds the coolest snakes and Bob has the best lizards, and Bob is he's an awesome breeder and herper and active member in our community. And the whole time that Bob was doing this, the business name was Cigars Inc. DBA Snakes. We had no idea. His business license, his tax ID, his LLC, his incorporation, whatever it was, it could have been Canova the whole time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe because his business is expanding, he says, you know what, maybe it's time we actually use the real name. Who knows? There's any number of things.
Yeah, Pangea is a good one. It's another good example. But you look at guys, Lee Abbott. Like there's some people whose names are just synonymous with certain things now. And like when I hear Lee Abbott or I hear Howie Sherman,
like but did Lee Abbott ever have an actual company name?
I don't
think so.
No. If he did, I don't know what it is.
Exactly.
Because it's Lee Abbott.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the question is if Justin Smith is a world-renowned breeder of corn snakes, Justin Smith isn't going to file his taxes, his business taxes. He's going to have, how do I phrase this? Justin Smith has an actual business, right? Mm-hmm. And therefore he's going to run that business as the business, right? But that doesn't mean that the business may get the limelight because Justin Smith is the breeder. So Justin Smith gets the limelight. Does that make sense?
Yes, because when I breed conjures again, I'll be back on that high horse.
Yeah.
Looking down upon the peasants.
Yeah. And Mike Kosicki says something good. He says reputation versus brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a brand's reputation can be awesome. But the brand's reputation isn't necessarily going to be awesome if the owner or the proprietor's reputation is not.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's plenty of people that I can think of that have certain brands that are, they're historically entrenched in what we have as, as a whole in herpetoculture currently, but the people that own it are very rough around the edges.
Yeah. Yeah, we all agree on that.
I won't name names.
Yeah, but we can agree on that on multiple different avenues.
It's sort of separating the art from the artist.
Yeah. And at the same time, there's been countless times where I've had, at least in my industry, I've had friends or clients come to me and say, "Hey, I know that this is a different person's business, but I'm thinking about buying X, Y, and Z from them. You know, are you friends with them? Are they reputable? You know, I bought a lot of stuff from you. Could you help me out a little bit in that regard?" And I usually don't have a problem with that. But it's very funny when they know that business, they've bought from that business before. They just didn't know that that was the name.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, I see that a lot these days, especially with this whole social media thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's almost like people saying, "Hey, man, that guy Justin Smith has some really cool chondros. I was thinking about buying his, but I also saw this guy in South Carolina called Palmetto Coast Exotics, and his stuff is awesome too." Like, I feel like that happens more
Snakes
often
are
than not.
identical.
Well, I really feel like that happens more often than not.
Yeah. Yeah. Henry said Canova came from a marketing firm he hired.
Oh, well, there you go.
Which maybe that I'm sure that plays a part in why it's been such a successful rebrand, because he had an outside source that is not sort of, they have an outside perspective of herpetoculture. You know, they're not sort of in the mindset of, we're doing reptiles, so I need to name it something that clearly states that it is reptiles or pets or, you know, whatever. Having said that, there are plenty of business names that I've seen people pick for their Instagrams and stuff that really makes me wonder why.
Yeah.
I've seen some really rough names. I'm like, why would you pick that?
It's true.
I off the top of my head, I mean, there's a couple I can think of, but it's just ridiculous stuff like choose violence exotics, just like stuff like that. It's like, why? That's not an actual name, but that's in a similar vein to what I've seen. And it's just like, what, and I get it. Like, not everyone's going to take it seriously or as seriously, but at the same time, you kind of do have to think, like, if someone saw this on a business card or saw it online, like, would this make them think twice about purchasing from me? And stop talking about MK colubrids. Grandpa's balls. That's a classic right there. He's at Daytona, I think, most years. It always makes me laugh because you see his banner.
Yep.
Rob said his shirts say, "Don't Google me."
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, and Rob said Stewart Design was the marketing firm that Canova used. Brandon Valentine, Psycho Exotic 666. Thanks, B. That's good.
And we get a lot of that sort of tongue-in-cheek stuff, especially in the ball world. You know, like, fondle my balls.
Yeah.
Tickle. Well, now we're gonna get demonetized and shit.
Yeah.
Tickle my balls. You know, just like goofy stuff. And it's, I think there should be a certain level of sort of professionalism, I think, involved. And it's like, yeah, you could be the most professional person ever and be the best to work with and stuff, but if you're handing out business cards that say, you know, fondle my balls, captive bred ball pythons, that's
I
don't know. It's cute and all, but
hey, man, everyone's got a pitch at some point. You know, everyone's got a shtick. You know, if it gets people's attention, if it's jaw dropping, you know, they may do it. They may try it. So
it is memorable. I will give them that. Like, you do remember those things. Like, you remember Grandpa's balls.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
It's like the old saying, you know, bad PR is still good, is still PR. Is that how that goes?
Yeah. Any press is good press.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? Which, I mean, yes and no. It depends on who's writing and who's reading, you know. So, but yeah, I think that if people want to brand themselves or what they're doing, go for it, you know. go for it. But also be realistic with oneself and don't beat yourself up if it doesn't evolve or come to fruition the way that you want it to. You know?
It's consistency. It's sticking with it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, talking to Harlan Wall a handful of years ago, he said, you know, if you're sort of in it for the long haul, he said it legitimately takes a solid probably 8 to 10 years for you to be sort of an established quote unquote business, you know.
Sure.
And if you're thinking about if you're buying younger animals, it's going to take you a couple years to raise those up and breed them and then get offspring and build upon those. And in the same timeline as Palmetto Coast, you know, I think he's absolutely right. Like I started Palmetto Coast in 2016. And I'm still, I don't think, at a point where I think I'm producing enough to even be able to like sell consistently, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I don't know that I'll ever really get to the point to where, you know, I'm like Westmoreland there in the chat, ECW Reptiles, who's cranking out, you know, hundreds of babies a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother me. It just is like I want the quality of what I'm selling to speak for me.
Sure. And at the same time,
Eric doesn't. That's completely separate from
Eric. Of course. We never talk about him. He's awesome. But I also feel like people, at least right now, a lot of people feel compelled to become a breeder. And even if they're not into it for like the money aspect or even the fame aspect, if you want to call it that, I feel like there's very much a unspoken mantra floating around where, oh, if you're not a breeder, you're not
real.
You're not real. Yeah. Which I think is hogwash, man. I do. You know, I feel like if you want to breed stuff, rock and roll, but you don't have to be a breeder to enjoy what we do.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing like, oh, you only have 5 snakes. Who do you think you are? You don't have to have 100 snakes to be an active member of the community. You don't have to have 100 snakes to know what you're talking about and enjoy what you're talking about. You know what I mean? So.
I mean, a prime example of that is Alex Horvath, who was the Corn Stars Man of the Year for last year.
Yeah.
He's done some joint projects with a friend, but in terms of like him breeding his stuff where he lives and what he's doing, he hasn't done it yet. But the dude knows more about corn genes than I do.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I trust, like, if I wanted, I have no issue going to him for advice and picking his brain about stuff. And, you know, hey, I'm thinking about pairing these and these. What do you think? You know, so it's like, I think the criteria for being a breeder equaling legitimacy, maybe that's sort of formed from like the rabid Facebook groups where you have the people that have had 3 snakes for all of a month, but somehow know everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
And feeling like if someone's bred, then they've had them long term and they can have like their opinion sort of holds more than that person that only has the 3 snakes for a month, but is somehow telling you how to keep emerald tree boas.
Yeah.
That hypothetical person that everyone talks about.
Yep.
The social media boogeyman.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And sadly, it's because of those people that individuals like myself are apprehensive to give advice or give a tip. Not saying I'm, you know, God's gift to snakes at all. I mean, I make a ton of mistakes and it took me a long time to learn what little information I know. But it does make me apprehensive to chime in and give 2 cents when people ask a question, because there's going to probably be some nasty backlash for nonsense because I'm not in there all the time and because no one knows who I am. Does that make sense?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There was, I mean, Eric, who's, you know, ECW Reptiles. No, it was Tim Mangum in one of the corn groups chimed in on care about something. I think it was like humidity for a corn snake. Someone had asked something, and someone popped in and was like, "You don't know what you're talking about. You've clearly never done this before." And it's like, Tim breeds some of the nicest corns in the country. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just funny watching this exchange because Tim didn't care. Tim was like, he was playing along with it and he was just totally messing with the person. I thought it was hilarious, but it was just a prime example of like, you can't really base.
Yeah.
Just because someone isn't there every day chiming in on every single post doesn't mean that they don't have something to add. There's plenty of bad information out there, but
yeah,
there's plenty of good information and good people too. And it's like, I think what me and Jake talked about on THP last week, is like, if you're having a myriad of people chime in with the same information, then someone comes along and posts something that's fairly different from what you were just told, and it doesn't seem like it's like behind to the right, way out there, like left field kind of thing. Like everyone's saying, keep the hot spot at 86, and someone comes along and says, "No, man, keep him at 75." If it's something a little more realistic, like, let's keep the hot spot at 82.
Yeah.
Somehow that person will get crucified because that's too cold. But it's like, you talk to pretty much anybody that's been doing it long term, and they've come to find that 82 actually is kind of the sweet spot for a lot of stuff.
Sure.
But they're going to get buried by the mob.
That's a good word, buried. That's a very good word. I also, on the same lines, if someone is direct, and I won't say rude, I won't say coarse, I'll say direct. If someone is direct and you don't know who they are, don't feel
It
attacked.
Is a love stream, Rob.
Yes, it is a live stream, Rob.
No, love stream.
Oh, love? Okay.
He said, make sure y'all drop a like on this love stream.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Live stream, but...
Well, we love Rob, so it is a love stream. I love it when he texts. Like, he texts me, it makes me so happy because we don't talk that often. And I'm like, oh, I got a message. I got to text him back. Anyway, all right, going back to the chats and the knowledge sharing, if we will. I personally have seen it where someone is direct, right? And people get offended. Okay. So for example, I won't name names because I don't want to single people out, but when Marcus and I were doing the Cordillus stuff hardcore, I think at the time, oh man, I had most of the Cordillus, and then he had most of the smog, and we were on the Cordillus pages like every single day. And I had just had my first litter of Berarducci, and I had gone on there and I had said something about the babies because I want to make sure I had already bred Tropidosternum, and I was like, all right, I'm going to set them up the same way, very, very similar ecosystem. But I went on there and I said something like, I just got my first litter of Berarducci. Is there any, tips that everyone would want to, throw at me? Right. It's a very small community for a super niche species. And this one individual who is no, this one individual who is not only who is an admin, but is also a world-renowned expert, literally chimes in, do not overheat, they will die. And people chewed his head off. And I took that as duly noted. Thank you very much. And people lost it. They're like, how dare you talk to him like that? Why would you be so rude? And like started berating him. And Marcus and I were laughing because we're like, we know how this guy thinks. We know how this guy acts. English is not this person's first language.
Yeah.
So I took it as awesome. And I actually messaged him privately and I said, thank you so much for the response. What would be the ideal temperatures in your opinion? Blah, 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 blah. Whatever the question was. But I feel like a lot of people are very quick to be defensive when someone's direct. And that comes with people just being too butthurt, I think, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, you say that all the time. You can't pick up on tone and inflection via tag.
Yeah.
Because I'm guilty of that to a degree, where someone will write something and I'm like, why are they coming at me like that? And you'll be like, dude, you don't know if that's how they're saying it or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just an odd sort of default a lot of people have sort of resorted to, just with the way Facebook and things are.
Sure. But yeah, I just going back to that Cordelis thing, is that the individual that was air quotes rude to me is arguably one of the leading authorities on Cordelidae on the planet, and has bred more species of that genus than any other human on the planet in captivity. And he kind of is rude, but at the same time, I know that he's not coming from malice. So
he's just blunt.
He's blunt and direct. Yeah.
Stone faced.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Are they Russian?
German. Yeah, German for sure. So, but he's good people, man. We've chatted before. His English is pretty all right, so it's good.
Yeah, it's rough out there.
Yeah, but circling back to branding, I feel like if you, like you said earlier, keeping with it, consistency. You know, be proud, be prideful of your brand, and let it grow and let it evolve the way that it needs to, and stick with it. You know, and just because you change logo doesn't mean you need to change name. Just because you change name doesn't necessarily mean you need to change logo. And no matter if you change or not, that doesn't change you per se.
Yeah, I think no matter what you do long term, if you're using the same logo over time, you're gonna have things that you wish you had changed or tweaked. And,
sure. Yeah.
You know, me being a good example of that. You know, when I first had the logo made, I loved it. I was like, this is perfect. It's a perfect representation of what I'm doing. And then over time, it was like, oh, well, I don't really need a gecko eye anymore because I'm not even keeping geckos anymore. But I like the logo still, and I've had it for so long that it doesn't make sense to like completely overhaul it. You know,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just gotta. And you like there's gonna be something or some things that are eventually you're gonna wish you had done differently.
Sure.
But that's the case with I think a lot of stuff, and it's just a matter of sort of planning ahead, finding that sweet spot where you're not too niche, but you're also not too broad. And then consistency. Another thing that Harlan told me at one point that always stuck with me, you know, in terms of like transactions that go south. Because before, when you had like the BOI threads on Fauna, which were all the entertainment I would ever need.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You would see people like really screw themselves over a transaction that really wasn't that serious. And that's what Harlan, you know, told me. That's always stuck with me is, you know, is your reputation worth the price of that animal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what I think about. You know, it's like if we're talking like world's first thousands upon thousands and thousands of dollars, like that's another level of issue. And I think you're kind of getting beyond the brand thing at that point.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about me selling, you know, a $200 corn snake, $150 corn snake, whatever, and something happens, like, am I really gonna have myself get raked over the coals over that?
Yeah.
Especially if I was in the wrong. Like if it's something where it's like the buyer bought something and then, you know, 2 months later they're like, hey, this thing died and it's your fault. That's a little different. But seeing people just really make an ass of themselves over something really small, really insignificant in the grand scheme of things, where it's like, you know, you could have just you could have handled that and not had this result.
Yeah. And I think that having great communication, which a lot of people can't do, a lot of people don't have that in them, but trying to have great communication goes a really long way. And I feel like having patience as both a buyer and a seller
Mm-hmm.
goes a long way. I feel like
Very long way.
no one has patience anymore. And at this, and you also have redundancies that can be annoying. And I know a lot of sellers get frustrated and annoyed because they've lost patience for people asking them questions. And the problem is that they almost open themselves up to those questions. You know what I mean? If you post a picture of an animal and say, DM me for information, and then I DM you, you can't get mad at me for DMing you. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, we as buyers also need to have some
There's a
patience and
level of
have
professionalism on that end too.
right a level of exactly. You can't just message someone and be like, "Yo, how much?" I'm not going to reply to you because you're a poop face. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Going back a quick step, talking about how you were saying that to really have good brand, you know, you really shouldn't be too niche. I feel like that is a great statement, unless that is your goal.
Unless
Is
that's your
to
thing.
be,
Yeah.
exactly, unless that is your goal to be super niche. Um, there's a individual, and it pains me that I cannot remember the person's name. Damn. But there's a person online that is focusing on Angolan pythons. And I'm pretty sure the account is Angolan Python Project, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been following the account for like 2 years, and I've been watching the evolution of it and watching that person get more specimens, watching their specimens grow, watching the pairings, watching the eggs, and like it's awesome. I don't even know if they're in this country, but it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And that person chose Angolan pythons specifically to be their niche thing. They love them. Rock and roll, go for it. But if you want to be a more rounded, I won't say well-rounded, a more rounded seller, well then yeah, don't focus on too many things specifically, in my opinion.
Mike says Bill got his Mertens monitor on Sunday.
I saw pictures.
I did see
Awesome.
pictures.
Awesome
Fantastic.
possum.
And Mike Kosicki said, God forbid you don't respond in 5 minutes to a buyer online. Yes, that falls under the professionalism on the buyer's part. I think Amazon has really across the board for retailers.
Yeah.
And it's like they've really ruined the ability to not have to get things out the door and respond immediately. I try to be as responsive as possible, but I'm also on my phone too much. Like Amazon, dude. Like I remember at the cigar shop, we'd ship cigars that people would order, and we'd ship them priority mail, which is like 2 or 3 days, depending on where you're at in the country. And these people were like, "Well, when's it gonna?" Or we'd ship something out. I think it was one guy in particular. We shipped something out, and literally like the next day he called. He's like, "When's it supposed to get here?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Dude, like we're not. This ain't Amazon. It's not Amazon." I love Amazon as much as the next person. I think the next day delivery thing is great. Prime is phenomenal. All that good stuff. I do not expect anyone who is not Amazon to get me my stuff next day unless I paid for next day.
And I think it's interesting how we sell a lot of stuff that can't go to your house. It has to go to another dealer.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have a lot of stuff that can go right to your house, like pocket knives, some really high-end pocket knives, some very expensive pocket knives. And these people will Monday morning, right? So Monday morning, my shipping guy is overloaded because it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday's orders all Monday morning ready to rock and roll. So someone will buy one of these fancy knives Monday morning, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and then call it like 10:30. Be like, I don't have tracking yet. Well, yeah, I've got 50 friggin' boxes to look at before I even look at yours, let alone put the tape on it. You know what I mean? And people just don't get that. Yeah.
It's a psychological phenomenon.
It is. Thanks a lot, Bezos. But yes, I do enjoy my prime. It's delicious.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's the, in terms of being a seller, I learned very quickly, don't expect, if someone messages you about an animal and they want pictures, and you got to do the dance. It's part of the gig. You got to do the dance. You're not going to avoid it. People are going to want information. People are going to want pictures.
Yeah.
They're going to want videos. I accommodate as much as possible and within reason. Because if like I've sent you 30 pictures and you're still wanting some, then it's going to be like, look, I can't literally, unless I send you the snake to look at in person, like I can't do anything else for you than what I've sent. I save myself the heartache, and I just assume that the transaction is probably they're not gonna follow through.
Sure.
And you save yourself a lot of disappointment if you get messages about animals. It's like, if you're just like, the likelihood of them actually coming through and buying is probably pretty slim. Then you don't get your hopes up. You don't get upset when they just ghost you.
Well, I also feel like we as a seller don't necessarily do our due diligence to prevent those things.
True.
So, for example, if I have 5 corn snake neonates that I'm going to sell, I'm not necessarily, how do I phrase this? Before I even fabricate the post, I'm going to take a minimum of 7 to 10 photographs of each individual specimen. A headshot from the top, headshot from the right, headshot from the left, under the chin, a belly shot and a deli cup if I can, or holding in my hand. I'm making this up as I go along, by the way. And that way, I can post a general picture of each individual animal. If I'm posting them all on one page, or I'm posting 5 individual posts, and then if someone wants this, is, hey, can I have more pictures? I already have them ready to go. And I'm not frustrated. Oh, now I got to go take it out. Now I got to wait till I go home to do this. You know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of sellers don't take that extra 5 or 10 minutes to take those extra cell phone photos. You know what I mean? And yeah, people they want to Photoshop it. They want to use a DSLR. They want to put it in their little light box thing that they got. I get that. But at the same time, you can still take your cell phone and take a couple hand shots or cell phone shots of each individual animal, showing a particular patterning, a particular saddle. Maybe there's a kink in the tail, whatever it may be, a weird scalation on the ventrals, something that is unique to that individual specimen, and just have them on your phone for what, a couple of weeks, a couple months.
Google Drives are free when you get
Google
like 15
Drive,
gigs
exactly.
for free.
So I feel like if more sellers did that, it would put the sellers at ease, because they won't have to be like, oh, now I got to go home and do this. Now I got to take the snake out again. No, just do it ahead of time. In my opinion,
Two birds with one stone. Here's another
exactly,
one for you.
exactly.
So if you're already posting on Instagram and TikTok and you're doing reels, if you take a short, 15, 30-second video or reel of stuff that you have for sale and you post it on your Instagram, you're working on growing your following. B, if someone asks for video, you can send them that, and maybe they weren't following you on those platforms, and now they can.
Yep.
And if you take, like when I do the reels, I take stuff outside, because the outdoor lighting, like that's the best lighting
for sure
you can get. So especially early in the morning before the sun is really like blasting everything.
Of course, and that's permitting that you're allowed to, and that the weather permits
correct.
it.
Yes. Yeah. Like that's, then guess what? You send them a link. They can see when you took that video. It says it at the bottom of the post if it was done 20 minutes ago, 3 days ago, whatever. You're posting stuff for the day. If you're a daily poster, like, you've got other options that do kind of streamline things and make it a little easier, and they're more efficient in terms of like growing the brand itself.
Yeah.
So, food for thought.
I'll also say this too. In my logo is a Nephris amii. I don't have any at all. I don't keep them currently. So I can't get mad when people message me and say, how much are your amii?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have to
Yeah.
tell them, be like, hey, I don't have any. Sorry, whatever. You know, be somewhat cordial, providing they're cordial. But I can't get mad at them and be like, I don't keep that. Why would you even ask me that? I didn't post any of those for sale, did I?
Idiot.
Idiot, stupid head. So
Say, but I do have. You ever heard of a ring calls?
yeah.
Let me tell you about these, kid.
Yeah. You want
Forget
some
the
Cerastes?
the Amy A.
Yeah.
Let
And
me
if
show you
anybody,
something cooler.
if anybody who listens to this is keeping venomous and they would like a long-term established male Cerastes, hit me up
Send it to me.
if you want it.
I'll hide it from Katie.
Marcus and I have 6 males that we're looking to sell to good homes.
Just put them on Craigslist like a normal person.
That was a joke, Fish and Wildlife. That was a joke.
Well, up here in South Carolina, we ain't got no rules, so
Yeah.
I have seen people selling like cane brakes and copperheads, and they were the the Rubbermaid drawers that you get to like put socks in and stuff that you
Yeah,
get at
yeah.
Walmart.
Mhm.
There was an ad a couple of years ago where someone had a cane brake and a copperhead, and it came with the Rubbermaid drawers, and they had like
Nice,
hay
nice.
as the substrate.
That's awesome. That's some
It's like,
redneck ingenuity.
it's like, God, why? How?
I used to keep pandanus in those things
That's one thing.
until my captive bred Sierra Leones pushed the drawer open. Didn't think it could do it.
You say Scott said, "Yeah, just zebra spitters in the suburbs, Smitty." Yeah, that was North Carolina.
Yeah, different Carolina.
Even that's a little rich for our blood down
Yeah.
here. What's a suburb?
It's kind of funny. Oh man. What else? Covered a lot of shit, man.
Yeah.
There will be a new episode of Venom Exchange Radio probably sometime this week. I was supposed to do it the past 2 Sundays and I keep forgetting. I know I thought I put it on the auto upload and I didn't. I never.
That was your excuse last time. That was like a month ago. What else you got?
No. That one worked. That one.
Oh
worked.
yeah, because I listened to it and I was like, "Man, you didn't tell me about this." And you're like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"The new episode." You're like, "What new episode?"
Yeah, I forgot I did it on that one, and I thought I did it for this one, and I guess I just didn't solidify it or commit to it or whatever. But it's there. It just hasn't been, sent in. So,
any corn stars this week? No, but we are. Dude, I hate to pick favorites, but that has become one of my favorite shows to do.
I get it, man.
I think it's Chris mostly.
I believe it
because Chris is so much fun to hang out with and talk to.
Yeah.
And his enthusiasm is infectious.
Yeah. I contemplated talking to you about having Snakes and Stogies on other nights every so often, just so we can get some Chris. We can't do that to our listeners.
It's not football season anymore. Ain't nothing else going on. We do need another book club episode, so we were gonna try and do that with Billy Hunt tonight, but he's working. He's at the station. So
yeah. And thanks, Ivory. Appreciate that.
And that also, if we plan that out, that gives me a little more time to get my list of books together, because I feel like every time we've done that, you guys have had like 20 plus books, and I've had like 5, and I'm like, yeah, this one's good. I read it like 10 years ago.
I haven't bought a single herp book since like the new year, which is a long time for me because I've got so many books that I haven't even opened. And I just reorganized my whole bookshelf and everything because I was using the book app that Burke uses. And the books I forgot I owned and like never opened, or maybe I read like the first chapter. I was like, this is awesome. I'll get this later. And then I just never went back to it. So I have so much to catch up on. And now I find myself rereading stuff like out of the Stiletto book, and I got the Rock Rattlesnake books now. So I was like trying to read excerpts out of that. Ugh.
See, all the new books that I have, they're all books that like you and Billy had mentioned in the book club episodes. So now I'm like, am I just going to talk about the same books we already talked about?
Well, yeah,
But,
because you give your perspective of it, your take on it, you know.
like I have to get my hands on that Atheris book.
Yeah.
I have to get my hands on the second edition of Venomous Bites from Non-Venomous Snakes.
Yep.
Problem is, motherfuckers are expensive.
How much is the Atheris book?
$100 after shipping. It's like 50 for the book and then 50 for shipping.
50 for shipping?
I think so.
Where are you buying it from?
It's coming from Germany. Like the guy that wrote it is over in Germany.
Okay, after this, I'll send you some links for some other venues that might be a little cheaper.
It's not out yet, Scott, but it will be soon. Like Wyman got his copy because he did a pre-order, so they are due to drop soon. So
good stuff, man. And sometimes you just gotta just buy it. I know, like I know it's difficult to say that because
you have a wife and a budget. It's not that easy.
No, I know, but like sometimes you squirrel a little money away here and there, and you kind of, I don't want to say make an effort, but like little things here and there. Like instead of buying 5 cigars, you buy 4, like little things like that.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It's just out of the question. Don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. What am I saying?
Edition Chimera mail for €25 worldwide. That Atheris book, I don't think that is Edition Chimera, is it?
No, but they sell it.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you...
Well, what's €25 in USD? Like 75? What's the metric system for money? I'm just worried that I'm not gonna get my hands on the Atheris book before they disappear and then shoot up to like $500 a pop. So yeah, books don't require any care feeding. You pay for all that up front. Are you sure, Scott? It's probably like 75 Canadian. But I do need to get that. I need to look at how many pages it was. I forget. It had to be pretty sizable. I just, as much as I love that whole genus, it feels wrong to not have that book. And also, since Alexander England has so many pictures of his stuff in it, kind of have to. Hunters in the Trees is a great book. I was a little bummed at how sort of like small it was in terms of page number, but even with the smaller page count, like the amount of information in there makes up for the size vastly. I don't know. I've been picking up a little more side work as far as the branding and marketing stuff lately, so try and get some extra coin to buy me some books. Daddy needs a new pair of shoes. Dobby is a free elf. Phil froze again. Let me see if I can copy that. I can't. I'll look it up when we're done. I think we're about to be done because I think Phil's the satellite for his internet is shifting over the other hemisphere, and that's why he's losing internet. He keeps disappearing and reappearing.
It's friggin' malarkey.
Damn it.
Did you hear what I was saying
about who?
Conversions?
No.
No, I was saying €25 is $27 US.
That's deal breaker, man. Inflation. That's the paywall for knowledge.
Yeah, right. Jeez. Some of it's just got to be bought.
I had my copy of my edition Chimera Dart Frog book on eBay for a while because I was like, oh, I'll sell this and I'll buy something else with that. And someone had like a conniption that I was even selling an edition Chimera book. I don't remember who it was, but
Probably all of us, because that's a
I was
foolish thing to do.
Is it though?
It is.
If I'm driving a Honda and I'd prefer to have a Toyota, am I going to get chastised because I don't want the Honda anymore?
No, it's that you don't sell literature.
Why? Says who?
Says me. Because I have a book on.
Foolish,
gosh, I have so many.
It was probably Scott. Now that I think about it, I think Scott was the one that was yelling at me.
Yeah, I have books for stuff that I'm never going to be interested in, that I was interested in. But you know what? When I'm fucking 80, I may want to read about it. I have a book on mantellas. I don't keep amphibians, but I may want to read about that when I'm 80.
I may want to move to Cancun when I'm 80. I don't know.
Better yet, my children or my nieces and nephews or my neighbor may want to read about mantellas, and then I can hand them that book.
Here, kid, have a $500 book. Go nuts. Here's some crayons. Draw in it. Do whatever you want. I'm 80. I'll draw with you. Right in the cover.
Horrible.
Like the textbooks from middle school.
Yeah, you know, my mom told me when I was in college and I went after my first semester, she says, I had said to her, hey, I'm gonna sell my textbooks back to the school store. Because my mom's a teacher. I said, do you guys have a school store? Would it be different pricing? Because like same county and everything. And she said, why would you sell your textbooks? I said, because they're expensive and I'm never going to use them ever again. They're textbooks. She goes, no,
you freeze again. But I'd be like, Mom, I don't need a textbook on art philosophy from the 1800s. It's not, I think I'm good. If I want to sell my edition Chimera books, I will. And I'm upgrading to other edition Chimera books that will serve me better. There's nothing wrong with that. Scott, you're not going to bully me into feeling bad about it. As soon as he comes back, we'll wrap this up. Mike, are you done feeding snakes?
Screaming at the monitor right now.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up while we still can.
Yeah, exactly. Long story short, I sold the math textbooks. I kept the biology ones. End of show.
Did you hear me? I said, Mom, why do I need to keep my textbooks on art philosophy from the 1800s? It doesn't do me any good anymore.
You know what's funny is if I had a textbook on art philosophy from the 1800s, I would have totally kept that shit because that would be awesome.
You would, nerd.
I would. You're goddamn right, sir.
This episode was brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. Check them out, Facebook, Instagram. Use code THN at checkout. Get yourself a rack. Get yourself a cage. It's all nice. You can't go wrong. And then go to Facebook and Instagram and search up Puget Sound Pythons. Give them a follow. Hunt them down on Morph Market. Also give them a follow. Stay in the loop. They usually have some very nice stuff when they post some stuff that's available. It's usually bangers. We'll be back for THP on Thursday. I believe we are going to have Connor Wardle return.
Ooh.
Talk about. I want to get into some Hypsiglena. I think we were going to mostly talk about coach whips, but I can't have Connor on and not talk about the real Janai. So we'll do that. And then Snakes and Stogies once again. Monday. I'm going to talk to Chris about getting a Corn Stars episode lined up. And that'll be good too. So I guess we can wait for Phil to come back so he can say bye. If anybody needs shirts, if you're branding and you need shirts, hit me up. I make them. Fast turnaround. Reasonable prices. New South shirts. Hit it up. I do have some stuff on my Morph Market. A couple corns. I need to renew my membership because I do have some other stuff that I have yet to post that I need to. I've just been avoiding it. And some snow tremels that Chris produced. Anery, that's Het Hypo, and some other stuff. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. Got a little Het 5-gene demon that I've had for about a year or so that Chris also produced. That's really nice. If that one doesn't go anywhere, I'm okay with that. Nice Het Amel, possibly Het Sunkiss male. That again, if he doesn't go anywhere, I'm okay with that too. Again, later this year, hopefully some Bairds happen. Planning on some corns to happen. And yeah. If you've got stuff from the raffle, animal-wise, that you've won, and we have not talked about shipping yet, please hit me up or any of us here at THN so we can get that lined up. Most people, almost pretty much everyone that got an animal, at least I know I've talked to, but in case I missed any, please get in touch. I think Phil's just not. I think Phil's just done. I think he's throwing in the towel. Yep. You see, I'm done. Fuck StreamYard. So angry. Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So everybody have a good evening. We'll see you later. I'll do the bye for Phil. Bye.